Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Samach Zayin. We are going to begin on Samach Zayin Amud Aleph, about 5 lines from the top, quoting the words of the Mishnah Zeklal, that this is the general rule. Kol shahanasoi minaisin tam v'chulu. So let's look at what the Mishnah said in the daf 2 days ago. So it told us that if you have something in which, even though let's say in itself is Isser, but if it's put onto something which is mutter, so it depends. If it's nice and tam, that it produces and gives a nice taste, then it makes it usser. However, the Mishnah also says, Kol she'en b'hanas v'nice and tam mutter, which means if it's not nice and tam, but rather it's nice and tam pagam, which means it diminishes the taste, then it's allowed. And the Mishnah concluded by giving an example like vinegar that falls onto greasin, onto grits. Apparently that's an example of something in which is nice and tam pagam. Okay, so on this the Gemara says as follows. This tak is the halacha. Nice and tam pagam is mutter. Okay, fine. So the Omer Yehuda Mishmol lo shanu. The only time, and that's what Rashi says, nice and tam pagam is mutter. But lo shanu, the only time we say this is the shanafal taik grisen, roischen. When we said you have vinegar that fell onto the grits, that's only if they were dealing with hot grits. And apparently, as Rashi says, chaymetz poigim grisen roischen, that chaymetz will ruin hot grits, and it will actually make cold grits better. That's why Aval nice nafal atay grisen seinin. Let's say the vinegar fell onto cold grits, v'har tzichen, and then it warms up the grits. So nase kimi sheshbiach l'b'seif pagam v'aser. So since it warmed it up, so therefore, even for a small amount of time, that was beneficial for the grits, and therefore, because that, even though afterwards maybe it took away from the taste or whatnot, nonetheless it's aser. It's only that it's considered nice and tam pagam, that it's mutter, is if it's the whole time. But if for whatever reason it makes it better, even if it there afterwards makes it worse, it's awesome. V'chein ki aser Rabbi Rabba Barbar Chana Rabbi Yochanan lo shonel shenafal osek risen reitzchen if it's hot. Avol nafal osek risen sein if they're cold, and then v'hir tzichon, and then it warms it up afterwards. Nas kamishish miach b'sei pagam v'aser v'chein, so too ki aser avdimi v'chul v'kach ha'yoisin bi'arvi shabasais v'tzipoidi. This is what was done there in Tzipoidi. V'karin oisan shachlayim, and they called it cress. So let's look at Rashi over here. This is what they did. They put vinegar onto cold grits, and it got better. And it was called shachlayim. Okay, but the point is that they did this. So why would you do this? It was obviously something that was good. Okay. Amar Shlakish, nice and tam b'gam sh'amru, that which we said, nice and tam b'gam, that's aser, lo shi'amru kedera zu chasera melach. So it's not due to the other ingredients. That, let's say, for example, it's missing salt, yisera melach, it's adding salt, so chaser tavan, yisera tavan, it has less salt, less spice, or too many spices. El kol she'en chaser klum, it's not missing anything. It's only this is giving a bad taste, nothing else. So it's not that it's only partially contributing to the bad taste, but it has to be that is mamish, the thing that's the problem. Some say nice and tam we don't say it's missing or has too much salt, too many spices or not enough. But rather, now it is poigim, even due, which is mashma according to this, even due to another thing, says Rashi. So this is actually, the first one is a chumrah, that, as Rashi says, it's not that it has to be not only that it was a nice and tam by something else. So, and the other Shita of Reish Lakish is a kula. Okay, says Rashi, Kloimer, Ein toilen hapagam b'davar acher. We don't to hang it on something else. Loimer to say chaserahi melach. So, in other words, you can say like this. You put it in and it doesn't taste so good. So why should we be makel? Maybe the reason why it doesn't taste so good is because it's missing salt. It's missing spices. So maybe that's the reason. However, Rashi says v'ilu haisa kitikuna. If everything else would have been in its place, lo hayazeh iser pugma. This thing would not have been poigamit. So if that's the case, so you would actually say that even though you would think noisen habagam, say no, maybe it's not noisen habagam. Maybe it's just because it's missing a spice, it's missing some salt, and therefore really it's not pagam, and therefore it should still be usher. Shamel chayim avatelas pagimas tam. Because maybe if you had the right amount of salt, it could have counterbalanced the iser. El kivanda tama iser poigma achshav kamayishihi kavi b'kamu mutter. It doesn't matter if you would have added other spices that it could have countered it. The reality is there's no spices there, and it made it not good, and therefore it's mutter. So that is a kula. Or you could say that it's a chumrah that even though it was poigim, the first understanding, the first lashon, is even though it was poigim the taste, it's not as good, but maybe that's only because there wasn't enough salt. But if there would have been enough salt, then maybe it wouldn't be pagam, therefore it would still be usher. Okay. So those are the two ways of looking at it. Omer Rav Avoy, Omer Rav Yochanan, Kol shetaimu umamashay usher loikinolav. V'zeu kadas mechnei achilas pras. A certain amount within a certain amount of time. So, when we're saying, says Rashi, anytime where the taste is there, which is aser, and you eat it, then you're going to get malchus. This is Rashi. Kagayin zeh v'al kagayin zeh nemer shir kazayis mechnei achilas pras halach mosh mesinai shim yesh b'shir pras shel tav shel kazayis min iser. If let's say there's a certain amount of iser in it, like it love afal pi shein kazayis shel iser nechel b'vasachas. Even if you're not eating the whole thing at one shot, kivan she'enu shoya b'chilaso, since you didn't delay or tarry eating it, mishihiskil oichel anshigomer, from beginning to the end, el kadei achilas pras mistarefes achilas of aloika. So therefore, even didn't eat it all in the first bite, but there's a time frame, so it's all mitzdarf within that time of kadei achilas pras. Therefore, you're going to get malchus. However, of course, if you do eat it, but it's not b'chdei achilas pras, so then it's considered, as Rashi says, skipping 2 lines, like shtei chilois. Shel shnei yomim. It's k'il like you're eating it 2 separate times, 2 separate days. So you're not going to get malchus. And pras is equivalent to chatzi kikar shel eruvi tchumim. Has to do with half a bread, which relates to eruvi tchumim, which we learned a lot about a few years ago, Masechtas Eruvin. Okay. So, in the event where you are eating it and it has the iser in it, so you're going to get malchus if it's a kazayis worth, and even if it's b'chdei achilas pras, which means again you didn't eat the whole thing all in one shot, but within a certain time frame. As we continue to samach zayin medbeis, let's say instead ta'amo v'lo mamashay. So says Rashi, kagain cholav shenafel kader. Let's say you have milk that fell into a pot, of a meat pot, and then you end up consuming the milk, right? It says Rashi, she'in mamashu be'en. So it's not like your mamash eating iser, because it's just milk, but the fact that it fell in, so therefore it became the tam of the iser, and therefore it's also being loikinolav. In this case, you're not going to get malchus. V'im riba tam l'pagam mutter. However, as we said before, if it caused it to not taste good, so it's nice and tam l'pagam, then it's mutter altogether. So those are the 3 things. But leimo, why don't we say im nas and tam l'pagam mutter? Why don't you just say pashit nice and tam l'pagam mutter? What it means v'im riba? What does that mean? So hakamashma de'afgav the mili achran yasa. Even if there's other things to pagma bahadeh that made it not good, but maybe it was not good because of those other things together, but the Isser itself maybe wouldn't have been poigamit. We'd think that wouldn't work. V'hilchas Kalishna Batra Dreish Lakish, and it teaches us the halachas like the second lashon, which is lakula, according to Reish Lakish. That means that if we say noisan tam b'gam, it's not just because the thing itself is usher and it combines, but let's say in the event that if there was, we would have could add some salt to it that would counter the isser and therefore would no longer be pagam, so maybe it should be usher. So we say no. We say noisan tam b'gam. The way it is right now, it's pagam, and therefore because of that, it's mutter. So that's the chiddush with that. Rav Kahana. Medivri kulam, from the words of everyone, Nilman, we can learn that noisan tam b'gam mutter. So Amalei Abai bishul memakuhu chai. I can understand when you say from everyone, that makes sense. El Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, El Reish Lakish Amru Karmer V'leilu Svirle. He said that this is what they said, but we don't hold like him. So Machlal the Ikoman the Noisan tam b'gam aser. That sounds, Taka, that not everyone agrees to this. That some people say that even though it's noisan tam b'gam, it's still aser. And where it says, yeah, that's true. Vasanya, as we learn, echad noisan tam b'gam, echad noisan tam shvach, aser divrei Rameir. For some reason, Rameir is of the opinion that even if we have something which is noisan tam b'gam, he holds it still aser, which is against everything that we said. But that's the sheet of Rameir. So not everyone agrees that noisan tam b'gam is aser. Is mutter rather. So my time to Rameir. Why does Rameir taka hold noisan tam b'gam is still aser? Because gomer migiule over the chachamim, as we learned before when it comes to the din of isur mistaraf heter. We learned this tam ke'ikr. So we learn out when it comes to giule over the chachamim the din regarding the kli midyan, as Rashi says. The pasuk says kol davar asher yavo b'eish. So anything that goes into fire, you have to kasher it with fire. So basically, you have to do with it whatever it was done before to remove the isser from the pot. And Rashi says the mashma hoyel min shtamish avin kochavim kli chamin was used with hot. Sarach hartiach, you have to heat it up in order kedei sheyiflo t'gulei shabola. Whatever was absorbed in it, whatever was boiled into those kalim, you need to do the exact same thing to remove it, to remove that from it. So when it comes to the Geulei of the Chachamim, so Geulei of the Chachamim, La b'neisan tam b'gam, hu v'asar achmana, ha'kanam lo shna. So the question is, these pots have been sitting around for maybe months, who knows, for a long time, and yet for some reason the Torah still tells us that you have to kasher them. Why do you have to kasher? Noisan tam b'gam. Must be it's a riot that noisan tam b'gam is usher. Mary says, no, it's not true. Who says that these pots have been sitting around all day, for a bunch of years? The Ida could Rav Huna Bereda Rav Chia. Yom Rav Huna Bereda Rav Chia will also tar el keder bas yaimo the loy pagamhu. So the only time we say kli, whatever is absorbed into the pot, is considered to be paigam, but that's only after 24 hours. If it's a bas yaima, if it's within the 24-hour span of time, then we still say that whatever was absorbed into the pot still has some positive properties. It's only when it's not a bas yaimai, then we say it's pagam. So therefore, what are you talking about? When it comes to the cases of the kli midyan, it's the reason why you have to kasher them is we're talking about a situation when it was on this day that you took them, that they just baked with them, they just cooked with them. V'idach Chadaz Rameir explained this. Even if it's for a short amount of time, what happens? Magically, after 24 hours, not a bas yom, all of a sudden it's nice and hamugam. So what happens, let's say, 12 hours in? So you want to tell me the stuff that's in the keli must be somewhat pagan. So we can still therefore learn, according to him, Nezin Tam Bagam is still Aser. Question 12. Maha Mokr do Rameir Nezin Tam Bagam Aser. So as we just said, we went out from the kashering of the kalim of Midyan, the Yesher the little Pogma Porta of Aser Rahmana, even though, okay, fine, it's a Ben Yoimai, doesn't make any difference. Question TA19. Ma hamachlokas im efsher lilmad begulei akum shenaisin tam begam aser. So according to one shita, so the only time the Torah asks is if it's a kader bas yaima. If it's not a kader bas yaima, then it's mutter because it's naisin tam begam is mutter. Or Rameir says no, yesher the pugma porta, which is I think the exact same question is TB21. And I wrote, Im yesha fil ksas ha-pigimois al hakli shuhu bas yoimo, or rak al hashe'eno bas yoimo nisan tam l'shvach. Okay, that's a pretty good answer. I like that. Okay. Okay, let's keep moving. Question. We'll finish this daf off first before we see more questions. Okay. Second last line. So Rav Shimon my time. So why does Rav Shimon? Okay, we understand Rav Meir. So what's Rav Shimon's reason why he holds that Noisin Tam Hagam is mutter? Testanya. Lo yisoichel kol nevela. You're not in nevela leger shebishracha, but rather to the ger in your nation you can give it to. So kol haroy leger koi nevela. Anything which is fit for a ger to consume, that's considered to be nevela. Samach Manalf shein roy leger in koi nevela. However, if it's considered something which is so spoiled and rotten and ruined because it's nice and tam begam, that's not nevela, and therefore it's mutter. Right? Nevela equals isser, but there's no isser if it's something which even this person would not be able to eat. Rameir. So this seems like a pretty good answer that shows you that nice and tam begam is mutter. So why does he disagree? So Rameir hahu lemiti surchim yikara. Saying no. This case is if it's complete. It was always ruined. If it's never good. If it was always something rotten or inedible, if you will. That's what it's referring to in that pasuk. However, if it was nice and tam begam, it would still be us. You don't need a pasuk for that. For be'almahu. So that it's obvious that it's like garbage. It's like earth. It's like eating dirt. Obviously, the Torah can't be referring to that. What's the chiddush in that? So it must be, it's talking about Nois and Tam Begam is mutter. Question 13. I'm going to stop there. Maha Makna Rav Shimon Nois and Tam Begam mutter. So again, it says, Osachel Chanavel Ger Shemesh Rachel. And we learn Kol She'enu Royal Ger in a Korean Nevel. Question TA. Let's see. TA 20. Maha Marker Rav Shimon Nois and Tam Begam mutter. So we saw because of the pasuk of nevela, and was the makar rameir shneisen tam begam aser. So it seems pretty similar to the question we said before, Yuli Nachrim, which is kind of a similar question. TA 19. Okay, that was TA 20. Okay, good. Let's look at question. TB 22. Okay. So Lamanya Menes and Tamagam Aser, which is Rameir, Madul Lunismite Menevela Shinaroy Lager. I wrote Zel Raim Nesha Davershu Saruach Ze Kamo Offer Ve'enu Afil Kamo Oichel Vize Poshit. Okay. TC 22. Isser Shinisar Beheter Be'ez Oifen Loikin Alav Be'ez oifen aser ve'ein loikin be'ez oifen mutter. Okay, so this is Samach Zayin Amud Aleph. Not the easiest question, but so if kol shetayim umamasho aser, and then you do get malchus, as long as it's within this certain time frame of kazayis b'chtei achilas pras. This is TC 22. However, let's say it's something like milk, which is taimo, but it doesn't have the it's not there. It's also, but you do not get malchus, and of course, nois and tam begam is mutter. So let's just see what Dirshu wanted us to write for question TC 22. So taimo mamasho kedzais b'chnelas pras loikin. Time of lo mamasho also ve'ein loikin v'im nos and tam begam. O rivel pagam, which is the extra chiddush, then in that situation we would say mutter adkan.